Hey there, this is your pal Pally, and welcome back to Git Er Raid. This big Undasta-like dino is apparently vampiric as he hungers for your raid's blood. This was a tougher encounter than I anticipated coming out of PTR. It is again a 2-tank fight and 2 to 3 healable, although your raid DPS needs to be fairly high it looks like. We 2-healed it here, and as you'll see, barely survived, although we weren't executing the best on this fight. The fight revolves around 2 alternating phases. In the normal phase, he is beating on you, doing some raid damage, and gaining energy. When he hits 100 energy, he does a big AoE to the raid, and also interrupts spellcasting. He gains that energy faster and faster until you push him into the next phase. How do you do that? Well, at least half of your raid has to be bloodied, which means they are at half health. Those bloodied people need to also be stacked up. Once that occurs, Thok goes into a blood frenzy, which is the second phase. Realize if you heal the bloodied people back over 50%, they lose the debuff, so you have to have those people bloodied and all stacked for it to push the phase. You may have to call out a stop to healing for a few seconds in order for it to happen if you want it to. In the blood frenzy stage, Thok will fixate on a random raid member and attempt to devour them. Yes, devour them. And it isn't just a little, ouch, he nibbled on me type devour. It's, you're dead instantly. Oh yes, and he doesn't just devour the person he is chasing. If anyone gets in range of his face, they go down too. So obviously you need to run from him. How do you push him back into the other phase? Well, you need to give him something else to snack on besides your raiders. That's where these cages come into play. At the start of the frenzy phase, a jailer ad will come out to see what is going on. He actually hurts a little bit on your tanks if you don't dispel the enrage, but after he dies, if you click on his body, you get a key buff which allows you to go open any one of the cages. In 10-man normal, there are 3 cages that can be opened. The NPCs in there aren't really that important to know, but basically the cages could be labeled fire, ice, and poison. Once you open a cage, the NPC will come out, and a little bit later, Thok will finally get pissed off enough to go chomp them, and in doing so, will absorb some of the NPC's power. One side note here is that the NPCs will also help your raid out for a little bit if you are near them when they get freed. Fire, I believe, boosts your DPS some, the ice guy will heal people until he gets swallowed, and the poison guys seem to boost your DPS some as well. Huge note here for the tanks. When Thok transitions back to normal phase, he has a clear aggro table. Pick him up fast. The biggest thing to worry about here is that the abilities granted to Thok after he swallows an NPC will depend on which NPC it was. So let's go through what each one of those NPCs will grant him, and that will dictate how the next normal phase will go. If he swallows the ice guy, his breath attack turns into a frost breath attack. Okay, duh. If a tank takes 5 stacks of this breath, he gets frozen in a tomb of ice. Okay, pretty standard. Likewise, the AoE that he is doing during this phase will also apply a debuff to a random player it hits, and once again, if they get 5 stacks, you need to free them from an ice tomb. Basically just make sure you're ready to break people out of their tombs as quickly as possible. If he swallows the poison guys, obviously his breath is now poisoned, and it applies a stacking armor debuff on the tanks. His AoE becomes poisonous, and will also inflict a stacking dot on the raid, so that can add up quickly. Finally, the fire guy will turn his breath into flames, which apply a stacking dot on your tanks. His AoE gets really annoying as it puts puddles of flames on the ground. You will quickly die if you try stacking up for this, so be very careful. So, what's the strategy? Well, most people like to save fire for last so you can kill him off quicker. So the order of preference seems to be ice, poison, then fire. My opinion is that you should probably just try to lust at the start and burn him as low as possible with as many raid CDs burnt as possible, and then go into his frenzy phase. Maybe shoot for 70-75% as a DPS mark to hit. From that point, you can get the jailer killed, free the NPC, and do a couple more % of damage before the stacking back up for his normal phase. Hopefully you can take another 20-25% off for him for each subsequent normal phase, and then he'll die. He does have a tail swipe, so you'll spend most of your time on his side if you aren't a tank. And speaking of tanks, in the initial phase before he's swallowed any NPCs, he does a fairly harmful debuff to the tanks that reduces your armor by 25% per stack. Probably safest to taunt off with 2 stacks of it. The biggest trouble we had with this fight was positioning in the Blood Frenzy phase. It's a huge room, but you do have a huge dino chasing your happy ass all around. We marked up the jails of the room with square, X, and triangle. Whenever anyone would get fixated, they would call out where they were heading to. It was the job of everyone in the raid to make sure to not be in line to ever get chomped on. Depending on which jail you were breaking, you could bounce the dino back and forth. So looking at this diagram, if we were killing the jailer over here and opening up this jail on square, you could keep the raid generally near that jail, and then when someone gets fixated, they run towards triangle or they run towards X, whichever one the dino was furthest away from. It didn't always work out perfectly like that, but mainly just have everyone be aware of which way the dino is being kited and clear out. Lastly, in refining strategies for easier kills, I've discovered that you can easily utilize the corridor that you come in from and kite him a long way. In fact, it probably makes it a ton easier to do so, and then try to keep him in the frenzy phase for longer. Fire phase sucks, and you want him to be almost dead at that point. So you could have melee and tanks killing the jailer, while your ranged blast away at him and kite him for a significant amount of time. People seem to think after 4 or 5 fixate switches, you should free the NPC and get him to transition to the next normal phase. But this still means that people need to be aware of where the dino is and get away from him quickly, as he'll go faster and faster in that phase. So that's about it for Thok the Bloodthirsty. Get bloody to push frenzy phases, avoid getting chomped, and use the jailers to free some tasty snacks for this dino. Thanks for watching, and please comment, like, and or subscribe to the video if you found it helpful, and have a good one!